Chapter 53. Kara. The news of a mid-semester student is not information that distributes slowly, even with my few contacts. We'd gotten a few days' notice to prepare ourselves. 3 days, as the administration has to set up a schedule for the poor kid. The student body is whipped up into a frenzy over the news. It's rare that someone would even be allowed to join this late in the year. It speaks of a very powerful person. Or, at least, their child. Still, it feels kind of cruel dropping them into the lion's den halfway through the semester and expecting them to be fine. There are whispers going around wondering who it might be, which noble lord or lady's child has suddenly developed their magic, or perhaps someone else. I have my own theory, but for my own sake I don't share it. There's a part of me that's sad to see I'm right as the day finally comes and I meet our new student. In potions class of all places. His skin and eyes are distinctive, but in a place as diverse as this you really can't trust the regional markers. No, it's the way he carries himself that gives him away. He's a stranger in a strange land, surrounded by strange customs and strangers. I don't like the way my eyes follow him, as though I'm no better than all the others, gawking at him and treating him like he's a toy for my amusement. Something new and shiny from far away, designed solely to intrigue us with its presence. This is the prince Jet had warned me about. The Prince of Durian. Right in my potions class. He's got his yellow slip, his full schedule written out straight from the registrar, and he's fighting, almost as hard as everyone else, for a chance to read it. "Let me see!" One student crowds into his personal space, and he has just enough time to move to one side as another ducks under his arm to get closer, under the pretense of reading the paper more closely. "Oh, you're in my section of history! We're going to have so much fun together!" she squeals, giving him a quick but telling hug. Stars. They're already after the throne. "You have Professor Jet?" One guy from my dueling magics class comes over and throws an arm over his shoulders, extracting him from the situation, though not putting him into a better one. "Oh, that's such a good teacher! Seriously, you are in great hands." She takes his hands in her own and gives a light tug, trying to pull him back to her. I can see the panic rising in his eyes. It's years of lessons and performing in front of the court and his own cabinet of nobles that keeps him from lashing out. He takes the prodding and praises as stoically as possible, a feat that is quite commendable given that everyone seems to be vying for this man's attention. I look away before this develops into a literal game of tug-of-war. His demon is getting a similar treatment. On the other side of the room. He's pulled away from the prince, and as shameless as people were about invading the prince's personal space, there are no greater qualms about laying hands on him. I'm not sure what kind of demon he is. He has some pretty significant facial tattoos that are fairly symmetrical as far as I can tell, and some horns peeking out of his rather long hair. But he doesn't seem to belong to the small list of common demons I'm familiar with. Blue seems intrigued by the ruckus that's being caused over in the corner, but he has no drive to try and get a better look or interact. I don't really know what to do with him. I can't tell if he's in pain or just processing the past couple of days. I don't like that he's forced the issue of going back to school. But it was his choice to make. It's also getting harder to talk to him now, like the first few weeks we were together. It's short, quick answers, interspersed with tuning me out. When we were just starting out, it was flashbacks, fear, and poisonous trains of thought, but now it's like he's not in his own mind. Sometimes I'll be talking to him for whole minutes before I realize he's not actually there. He's off in his own little world. I don't know which is worse. Blue simply kneels beside our lab area, content to stay still for another period. That's another problem with a new student, I realize. Potions is a popular class that is an instrumental prerequisite for a lot of different classes. All of the sections are full, up to the maximum amount of lab stations that are available. How the hell did the registrar think this wouldn't be a problem? It doesn't take long before Genevieve joins in with the rest of the crowd. She snakes her way into the group and finds her way to the struggling prince. The crowd has made its way around the subject of classes and moved on to the subject of his clothing. He's still dressed mostly in his own country's vestments, but there's an oversized sweater that's been pulled over the ensemble with the colors and crests of the Academia. "Oh, wow! You are so tall! Stars, I'd absolutely drown in your clothes." She runs her hands over one arm of the sweater like it's some kind of foreign material, not something anyone could pick up at the bookstore. She is not wrong. He is pretty tall, though not ungainly in any way, but whoever got the sweater for him obviously didn't know his size. The cuffs fall nearly past his fingertips. As much as she would drown in his clothes, he also seems to be. I, He looks almost as confused as he is concerned. Her flirting is at least a bit more subtle than what's coming from the others, but he's still uncomfortable. Eventually, Professor Rotan comes back into the classroom as our period starts and takes notice of the group crowded around our new student. With a few terse words from the professor, the students reluctantly drop their hold on their prey and retreat to their stations. As much as it helps him get out of being prodded like a prize horse, it does come with the unintended side effect of leaving him alone with no empty table to go to. Brendan seems to recognize this at the same time as the prince does, pinching the bridge of his nose and taking a deep breath. "We don't have any more lab tables," he admits solemnly, looking over the prince with undisguised pity. Yes, Professor." He takes a long time to speak, finding only a series of stuttery words before the teacher cuts him off. "I don't want you to be behind for anything, and missing out on this course will put you pretty significantly behind. Still, I'm not going to go easy on you. You will have to work through the semester's topics." It's pretty clear from his tone that Brendan's trying to get the prince to drop the course. It seems excessive, though not unheard of. It wouldn't be impossible to work through this kind of setback, especially given that a magic education is much more common in Durian. Much of what we're learning as first years would be a review for him. "I am a hard worker. I will try very hard not to disappoint." He speaks again, slowly and with a strange cadence, but very clearly nonetheless. A terrible thought shoots through my mind, and I try to just push it down as I watch the scene in front of me. "All right, then. It would probably be best for you to find someone willing to share their lab space with you and get settled in. I can help you get settled with everything else after class." Brendan speaks like he hasn't seen the entire class jump up like a bunch of meerkats. Immediately after he's suggested one of us share lab space, there are hands in the air. I know I should just sit this one out and let the others fight it out, but seeing him up in front of the class with everyone calling for his attention, I can see how terrified he is. He doesn't deserve this. He never even really had a choice. "You are welcome over here," I call, raising my hand in offering. Everyone else goes silent for a minute while the prince beams. I've never understood it. But once people learn the trade language, they really stop trying to pick up other languages and dialects. Visanra is a country that keeps the trade tongue as its national language. It's what gets taught in schools and is generally seen as a mark of sophistication. Someone who doesn't know trade is marked as a hick, someone from an antisocial society that doesn't bother making its people learn one of the most useful tongues. It's a pretty bad system that doesn't take into context the value that other places put on their traditional tongues. But every merchant learns the language, so it's become something of an expectation, at least for the people of Visanra. The language of Durian isn't overly complicated, but as much as the trade tongue borrows from every other language and rifles through their pockets for loose grammar, it doesn't take much from the prince's native tongue. I get why he's having trouble with it, especially given the amount of time he was probably given to prep for his impromptu diplomatic move. I don't discount the value of a familiar set of syllables. As isolating as this whole move has probably been for him, the entire situation is exacerbated by the fact that he can't even speak the common language of the country he's moved to. People have been saying he's slow or boring, But he's probably just been doing his best to try to keep up with the pace of those around him. I remember my first few months in Durian. Following along in conversations was hard, and when I spoke, it was only simple sentences that made me feel so stupid that I would rather just keep my mouth shut. He nearly runs to my desk, while Professor Rotan finds a spare chair in one of the closets. His choice is clear, but not everyone is happy about that. I can feel everyone's eyes on me. Genevieve's sink like daggers into my skin, and I have to fight the urge not to straighten my posture under her gaze. Please, sit. I'm Kara, by the way. I do my best to try and appear friendly and give him some encouragement to engage. Delarian. Please, just Day. He gives me a shy smile. All right, I acknowledge, gesturing to the seat again. I don't doubt that there's some comfort in a perceived familiarity. Any ally will do in enemy territory, and I can see that he's ready to settle for the person who's slightly less eager to tear him to shreds. Thank you. He sits, letting his bag fall to the ground and staring forward for another half a second while the teacher takes up his chalk, before turning immediately back to me. I'm sorry if I'm prying, but so few people here know the language of my country. Well, it's a very beautiful language. I smile back at him. Yeah, it was just the language barrier that had people saying he wasn't talkative. He's practically vibrating in his seat now that he knows someone can understand what he's saying. It would be a shame not to know it. Just think, if I didn't, then we wouldn't be able to talk. What a shame that would be. I continue, just to fill the space. Also, it has the added benefit of showing off. I'm pretty versatile in Durish, though it has been some time since I had occasion to speak it. I want him to feel comfortable, that I'll be able to understand whatever he throws at me. He's tense. His shoulders are drawn up even as he tries to settle into place to listen to the professor. I'm grateful you feel such a way. I fear my lessons have left me rather ill-prepared for this journey, and... Enoki! He continues smiling until his eyes find the ground next to us. His demon, who I can only assume is named Enoki, has stopped shy of actually reaching Blue. When he knelt down beside his master, I had assumed he would just keep the position like all the others, but it seems he's curious about my familiar. Though I can't say Blue returns the curiosity. Blue is leaning just about as far as he can from the approaching demon without breaking position. He hasn't said anything yet, but I can see the signs of stress on him. He's breathing fast, and his face has gone white. I don't know what he sees in the demon, but apparently he's afraid. Enoki, what are you doing? Day whispers hastily, trying not to draw any undue attention while he chastises his familiar. I can't take it anymore. Everyone's just saying random syllables, and I want to know what's going on. His demon, Enoki, hisses back. You know better than that. Day's cheeks go red as his lips set into a disapproving line. Enoki gives a huff, but instead of backing down, he grabs Blue's face and pulls him into a deep kiss. I see the fear in Blue's eyes turn to confusion, as if he wasn't expecting the rather gentle assault. It's over before I have the chance to break out of my stupor and put a stop to it myself. Blue, are you all right? I ask, pulling him away from the demon and keeping one hand between the two of them. I am so sorry. Day trips over himself trying to apologize for his familiar's behavior, but I'm just confused as to what prompted this action. What are you sorry for? He should be thanking me. Come on, I'm a good kisser, right? Enoki quirks a brow and sends a charming smile to Blue. Blue is flustered, though I am more confused about the perfect trade tongue that the demons decided to transition to. You're speaking... I try to voice my confusion through my surprise, but the demon cuts me off. Yeah, sweet cheeks. It's a special trick I've got up my sleeves for situations as inopportune as this. He gives me a slow wink with a smile that takes me an embarrassing amount of time to realize is supposed to be flirtatious. So, when you kissed... I speak, processing what's happened, when the demon cuts me off again. Kissed? Oh, please, that was just a greeting. A little exchange of information. You want a kiss, and I'll have to... As he speaks, a wide smile crosses his face, and he leans back over into Blue's space. But I stop him, putting my hand between the two of them before he can get too close. Okay, possessive. I can respect that, he huffs, rolling his eyes before finding his way back to Day's side and falling dramatically over his lap. Please forgive Enaki. He's just like that. Day takes a second to just pat Enaki's head. At least Day has the good grace to look ashamed. Enaki is just smiling wide, looking up at Day with a mirth that I can't place. Come on, my prince. Cut me some slack. I can transfer my gift if you so choose, he drawls, once again in his native tongue as he bats his eyes innocently. Enaki! I hear the warning in Day's tone, but apparently it's not enough to discourage his demon. You'd have to kiss me every hour on the hour. Can you handle that, my prince? He speaks in a lilting tone as he pulls himself just a little further onto his lap. Or, I could just learn the freaking language and not be dependent on your escapades. Day huffs back, utterly unaffected by his antics. You are no fun, Enaki whines, hugging Day tighter around the midsection. Day gives a sharp exhalation at the unexpected motion, but seems to be content to ignore the demon clinging to him, almost as if it's a regular occurrence. Quite a demon you've got there. I chuckle under my breath. Their dynamic is unique, if nothing else. I'm happy to find such a pair in this school. Day seems to genuinely care for Enaki, even if that is just the warpings of being surrounded in a strange land with only one link to relative normality. Quite a headache, you mean? He snorts back, running a casual hand through Enaki's hair, watching as he snuggles closer at the action. If you boys would please quiet down in the back, Professor Rotan calls us out for talking during his lecture, and, like a pair of 5-year-olds in time out, we shut our mouths and face forward, unwilling to incur any more of the wrath of the adult in the room. We sit through the rest of class, doing our best to ignore the palpable tension from the other students. I'm thankful that today a lot of the people in the block of potions do have other classes to deal with right after. They don't have the time to flank the prince like they'd done before class. Day waits for a solid minute before heaving a resigned sigh and pulling Enaki into a kiss, right in the middle of the classroom. When he pulls away, Enaki looks dazed for a second before he scrambles back to the floor, face bright red. I get the feeling that as much as Enaki puts on the act of confidence, he can't quite back it up. Day just rolls his eyes before moving forward to go speak with our professor. Enaki stays with us, leaning against the solid back of the table. He's curled himself into a tight ball, pressing his head into his legs to hide his blush. I take a moment to pack up slowly. I'm not sure if I'm meant to watch over Enaki while Day is gone, but I don't want to abandon him. I don't have another class after this today, and if he's free as well, I'd like to talk a little more today. Enaki doesn't give me any trouble. He doesn't even seem to move as we wait for the few minutes it takes for Day to work out a plan with our professor to make up all the work he's missed for this semester. Blue shifts on his knees. He seems confused the longer we stay, but I can't tell if the motion is born out of agitation or impatience. He seems wary about the demon sitting next to us, but given Enaki's apparent lack of boundaries, I suppose that's to be expected. I don't mind sitting between the two of them. It gives me some peace of mind, until Day walks back to our table. I'd like to thank you again. Day speaks in perfect trade tongue, and I'm certain that Enaki's gift was no exaggeration. Really, there's no problem. You free to talk? I ask him gently. I don't want to overwhelm him, but I would like the chance to talk with him. I think so, he hedges. Do you have any other classes? I offer. I don't want to take him away from anything important. He flushes a deep red, and I realize that he never really got the chance to go over his schedule fully with so many people pushing and prodding to see the slip. I help him check his schedule, noting that we have a couple of other classes together before confirming that he has nothing else to worry about today. That is, aside from the massive amounts of busy work that he has to complete and the notes he has to catch up on. Apparently, giving in to his demon's whims is too objectionable. If you don't have anywhere else to be, I wouldn't be opposed to having you over to my house. I can let you look over my notes, I offer. We share 3 classes, and I keep fairly good notes. He should be caught up in no time. Plus, I really want to know if Enoki's kiss allows him to read in another language as well as speak it with near fluency. I wouldn't want to impose. Am I dressed well enough to see your family? He runs a nervous hand down the oversized sweater, and I have to suppress a snicker. You don't have to worry about that. It's just me and Blue at home. I wave my hand to where Blue is walking, near soundlessly beside us. There's a tiny jingle as Blue flinches when my hand comes into his visual range, and the bell on his collar responds to his sudden movement. I hide a wince as I realize that Blue might not be in the best state to receive company. But I was hoping that a little bit of socializing might help to break him from this new frosty attitude. Oh, then I'd love to come. I shouldn't have to be back with my host family until dark. Day responds, continuing like he hasn't seen anything, and I sincerely hope that he just missed the action. We walk home together, talking about teachers and magic and all the little things that I can remember from my stint in Durian versus his lifetime of accumulated knowledge. The time passes quickly, and before I know it, I'm ushering the prince and his demon into my house. Blue looks distinctly uncomfortable. He keeps wringing his hands together, biting his lip and trying to put on a neutral face. I recognize the warning signs for what they are. Blue needs to do something, or he's gonna snap. Maybe all this stimulation was too much. Blue, would you mind grabbing us some tea? I ask, giving him a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. He looks up at me at the contact. His eyes are so far away and forlorn that it sends a pain deep through my chest. I very nearly can't stop myself from pulling him into my arms. I want to offer comfort, but I don't know if it would just set him more on edge, especially considering that it would be in front of 2 relative strangers. His eyes rise to about my chest as he gives a weak smile before making his way towards the kitchen. Enoki, why don't you help our kind host out with that, Day calls out. Enoki just rolls his eyes, but follows Blue regardless. I'm about to object when Day pulls me back by my sleeve. Sorry if I'm overstepping. Enoki hasn't had the chance to bond with a lot of other familiars. But as you've seen, he's a bit of a different cut, you know? He offers in lieu of an explanation. I still have half a mind to call them both back. I don't want to leave the 2 of them alone together. Not when Blue is feeling so vulnerable, and Enoki has such a problem with boundaries. But I have the feeling it will do more harm than good to overregulate how and with whom Blue interacts. As they vanish into the kitchen, I will myself to let go of the lost opportunity and get on with the rest of my life. There will be plenty of other moments to fuck up. I heave a short sigh and gesture to the open couches, leading Day into the living room with what I hope is a warm smile. Not a problem at all, I lie, hesitating for a second before I continue with a question I've been dying to ask since I saw the 2 of them. What kind of demon is Enoki? I don't mean to pry, I just don't think I've ever seen one like him. You probably won't see another one like him. Believe it or not, he was a misguided assassination attempt, Day admits jovially, finding a seat on the couch and laying down his book bag. Really? But you guys are so close, I prod. There's one hell of a story there if he's willing to tell it. He didn't really want to kill me anyway. He's a cursed doll. He shrugs away that explanation as though it actually explains anything. Enoki has already shown more personality and fine movement than any kind of automata I've ever seen. He certainly isn't bound or covered in the runes of a golem. He looks like a demon, though I have to admit he doesn't quite act like any of the traditional 7 archetypes I've ever seen. A doll? I try to ask for clarification without seeming too nosy. Yeah, back home there's a legend of the bloody doll. If the thing stays under your roof for more than 3 nights, it will come to life and kill everything in the house. Someone believed that they had tracked down this doll and presented it to me when I was about 14 or so. He explains with a wave of his hand, very casual considering the literal attempt on his life that he's describing. The thoughts make me smile. Nobles all the way up are pretty used to assassination attempts, no matter what country. Murder is a unifying force that brings us all together as people. Damn! I can't help the way I chuckle a little at his blasé admission. So, how did that go? Well, I thought it was just a really pretty doll, and I loved the thing. I put it in my room with a little canopy bed and a table. It's his turn to laugh at his own antics, and I have to admit the thought of him setting up a little landscape for his new doll is pretty over the top. Imagine my surprise when I wake up to a full-grown person crawling around my room. He didn't attack you? I quirk a brow at him. It seems like a pretty half-assed assassination attempt if he didn't even try to attack. Nah, he was just confused as to where he was, who I was, everything, really. He admits with a shrug. Confused? I parrot back, quirking a brow. Confused isn't historically the best descriptor for an assassin. He wasn't actually an assassin. People just put too much stock in the myth, assuming the doll would do its job when the days were up. But that, well, it didn't work out that way. But he didn't kill you? Didn't even know that was what he was supposed to do? I ask again. I wish the assassination attempts in our little slice of hell were so half-assed. We've lost 5 actual children of the crown, not to mention the countless unreported victims that have been killed in petty power grabs from overly ambitious extended family. I wonder if Day's would-be assassin had been someone in his court. Probably not if they relied on an untested magic object. I don't remember much about the royal family in Durian, but I know for certain that they don't have the same amount of spares that we do. Well, once I got him talking, he told me that he's beautiful by design. He only gets to have an animated form when he is loved by his host. He admits hesitantly. Oh! That's all the response I can muster, hoping that my face isn't the shade of red that I think it is. I've never heard of a charm or curse that works exactly like that, but it's not entirely outside the realm of possibilities. I've never seen an actual incubus, or seen them in service to an actual mage, but I suppose that sounds a little more in line with how Enoki acts. If I remember correctly, incubi do have a tendency to be a little more tactile by necessity. They feed off that kind of energy. He was a real prick, too, in the beginning. Still is, if I'm honest. Once he figured out I was his host, you know what he said to me? He said that I would have to tell him that I loved him 5 times a day. He laughs, wiping the beginnings of a tear out of his eye before he continues. But he just needed reassurance. He didn't know how his enchantment worked any more than the stupid people that had made up his myth. How did it work? I find myself asking, as much as to move the conversation away from the topics heating my face as from curiosity about the magic that animates Day's familiar. He'd be animated so long as someone loved him. He was a really pretty doll. A couple of days and the people who bought him would adore him to the point that he could transform. But as a doll, he didn't give off a signature as a magic object. People would get scared, and he'd lose his form as all their admiration turned to fear. All the legends had come from those who had witnessed him walking around and assumed they were in danger. He explained with a sour expression, showing his distaste for the whole situation. That sucks, I murmur. What more can I say? Enoki had to be aware enough that his animation was dependent on loving attention. I can't imagine the emotional damage that comes from knowing that every time he got passed around, it was because the people who had initially loved him enough to animate him didn't care for him anymore. I wouldn't blame him if he actually did start to play into his reputation as the bloody doll. I must be silent for too long. because Day just clears his throat awkwardly before continuing on in a lighter tone. "What about your familiar?" he asks. There's a clattering sound from the kitchen. Something must have dropped on the floor, but there's no sound of glass or any distress from the room. "Blue? Oh, well, he's pretty common among these parts." I chuckle nervously, trying to see past Day into the kitchen. There's no screaming or comical amounts of blood flooding the floors, so I have to assume it's all right. "I haven't seen another like him," Day insists, in a way that demands explanation. "Yeah, he's not that common in the magic community," I hedge. It's not untrue, and about as much information as I'm willing to give him. I know how people here react to Blue as a familiar, but I don't know if the same prejudices extend to Day. Anarchy isn't a traditional choice of familiar for Day, but I have no way of gauging whether he's weaker or stronger than average. This is already getting too close to the many conversations that people have tried to engage me in. Arguments like, "Blue's not strong enough," or "not suited to the duties of a familiar." I'm not ready to have this debate again, in my own home. It doesn't help that I really don't know what I'm doing. That I haven't come up with a plan for the rest of the semester, especially with the threat of quals looming. "That doesn't seem to be stopping you," Day continues to press. They think his kind is too weak for casting, and that he's not as special as all their other fancy breeds," I explain loosely, hoping he'll just accept that answer and let the matter go. But of course that would be too easy. "Well, that's absolute Minotaur manure. He's certainly special. At least to you." He smirks at me knowingly. Stars, is it that obvious? "You don't act like the others do, especially considering you're familiar." He looks me up and down as he speaks, as though he's looking right through me, making assessments on the deepest parts of my consciousness. We've been through a lot together. I stutter and stumble as Day just watches with a smirk. "Yeah." He mercifully cuts me off as my face heats under his attention. "You care for Anarchy," I shoot back, as though it is enough of a defense to negate everything he's managed to dredge up in the past few minutes. "Well, you know, he's still up and about. He likes to remind me of that every fucking day, but I haven't stopped loving him since the day we met." Day rolls his eyes, but there's an irrepressible upward tilt to the corner of his lips. "That's fair," I mumble, because what else can I say? He isn't at all self-conscious, and it's kind of refreshing. He's not embarrassed or ashamed of his feelings. He's confident, and he knows what he wants. Blue's been through a lot. He doesn't deserve half the shit they try to put him through. I speak without any real idea of what I'm talking about. The mysterious "they" in that statement takes on so many different faces at once. First, the school, all the mages that expect me to put him through hell for my craft. Then the city, the laws in place that are set to make me put him through hell as a punishment for living. And then there's me, who claims to care about him, but can't do a damn thing to protect him when it really counts, when he really needs me. I'm just as trapped as he is, but he's the one who actually takes the damage. They're both just desperate for a little loving, aren't they? Day responds to the vagueness of my own words with an equally interpretable statement. I give him a weak smile. He's not wrong. I'd love nothing more than to wrap Blue up in a blanket and hide him away from the rest of the world where no harm could ever come to him. I wonder if that's something that Day feels for Anarchy. If when all the bloody doll news came to light, there was some public outcry, and Day had to step in and keep his demon from the harm the public would do to him. You are in no place to judge. He raises a brow, crooked smile back in place, and I know that those eyes haven't missed a thing. Yeah, I admit. You do have a point. I can't act on it, not the way you do.
Why not? You are two adults.
He counters, and when he says it like that, it sounds so simple and so ignorant of the bigger picture at hand. You aren't blind to the way that they treat the familiars here. I narrow my eyes at him, suddenly distinctly uncomfortable. I feel bad making immediate assumptions. For all I know, the man just got in today, and only knows about familiars in the abstract sense, just like me at the beginning of the year. But I find it hard to convince myself of that particular excuse. Durian is a much more magic-saturated continent. Knowledge of magical practices and paraphernalia isn't hoarded among the higher classes like it is here. Magic is part of the public sphere of education, something integrated early and repeated often.
Familiars serve the same function across our borders, and as such there are always people who are more inclined towards the stricter methods of control. I'm not blind to the way you treat him. I'm also not deaf to how people talk about that one weird scholarship kid who doesn't treat his familiar quite right.
He bites his lip, horribly failing to repress a grin.
So you're telling me you would have come to talk to me even if we hadn't become lab partners?
I groan, fighting a grin of my own as I hide my head in my hands. I don't mean to stand out so much, but I suppose there are worse reasons to be looked at.
I admit that did help a bit. It might have taken me a little while to find you otherwise.
He admits with a levity that he shouldn't be able to summon.
Right.
I try to find the same positivity in his statement that he has.
To be fair, it is pretty easy to find the one person who's not actively trying to get in my face.
He continues his explanation casually while I try my best to be swallowed by the couch.
What are you two idiots talking about?
Anarchy barges into the room, holding a tray with a teapot that balances precariously as he swings about without regard for it. Blue follows behind, sputtering at the demon's tactless remark. He's got his own tray, stacked with cups and a plate of cookies. I can't help the way that I smile at the spectacle. It might seem like Blue's letting Anarchy help, but there is the literal bare minimum of trust here, as he's only letting the demon carry one thing. Though the demon seems none the wiser.
We're just comparing notes about how you are in the sack.
Day speaks with complete sincerity, locking eyes with Anarchy before shoving a cookie into his mouth. Suddenly, I am sputtering just as badly as Blue, and Anarchy's face goes scarlet. Stars. This is going to be a long day.